Welcome to Taking Stock with Lisa Brown. My special guest today is Brian McNeill, Senior Vice President with Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, the first executive outplacement firm in the United States. I asked Brian to join me today to talk with our audience about getting your resume recession ready. Ladies and gentlemen, the recession is coming if it's not already here, and we want you to be prepared. So today we're going to talk about how not only get your finances in order, but we also want you to get your professional affairs in order, because layoffs impact both your resume, your job searches, and your finances. So welcome, Brian.
Hi, Lisa. Great to talk to you.
So Brian, we know a lot of companies are watching the Fed spikes in interest rates to combat inflation. And this can lead to a slowing economy and thus slowing sales for companies. Very recently, Netflix, Redfin, and Tesla all announced that they're having layoffs. And it seems like every day I open up the news and there's more layoffs being announced. So you shared with me that when your phone starts ringing as an outplacement firm, that's often a leading indicator that a recession's coming. So the big question is, how much is your phone ringing these days, and should we be worried?
Well, the fact is, right now, the job market is still extraordinarily good. Like you mentioned, most economists are predicting that a recession will hit sometime in 2023. Even though we've seen a little bit of an uptick in business over the last few months, I have had discussions with executives within companies where they are internally starting to talk about some plans to mitigate some of that risk. And so even though you don't see a lot of massive layoff announcements right now, outside of a couple of outliers, we've seen some, like you said, technology companies, certainly with rising interest rates within real estate, mortgage business, and that kind of thing. But overall, it's still a terrific job market, but we do have evidence of companies starting to prepare for what everyone seems to think is coming. So even though things are good now, I do, just based on my experience, think that things will probably start to turn a little bit in the fall, particularly as it comes to layoffs and RIFs and that kind of thing, before we find ourselves in a textbook definition of a recession.
And Brian, we were talking last week about, just in some cases, how hot the job market's really been the last few years. And in particular, we've seen people getting, big signing bonuses, in some cases overpaid by 30 or 40% from probably their predecessor, just because it's been such a competitive job market. So if companies are having layoffs, how are they looking at some of these recent hires in terms of, how much they've been overpaid? Are those going to be some of the first people that might get let go?
I think so, but if you'll indulge me in a 60-second history lesson, I guess, I think with COVID, when COVID hit, outside, of course, of essential workers, everyone else went home and worked from home. And I think COVID in many ways kind of changed people's priorities. And so which is fine, but when the job market came back, once vaccines became available and companies started hiring again, the workforce was just not as big as it was pre-pandemic. So number one, you have baby boomers retiring at a large rate, and that is a fact outside of COVID, but that was going on. You have people just changing their priorities in terms of, I need to stay home. Perhaps I have a child that's school age and school is still shut down, and I'd rather stay home and help with that. You have people that just got used to working from home, and when they came back, felt empowered to ask for more flexibility, work from home situations or hybrid situations. So all of this kind of merged together when we come out of the I suppose the scariest phase of the pandemic once vaccines were available and whatnot. So ramping or hiring gets ramped up. It's very heated, but it's such a competitive market. So it became heavily candidate driven rather than an employer driven market. And so one of the things that companies did to attract workers is to overpay them, at least in comparison to what their position, what their skills, what their experience would have commanded pre-pandemic. So, anecdotally, I talked to dozens of people during 2021 that said, wow, I'm getting 30% more, 40% more than I got before the pandemic. And so I don't know that that's entirely sustainable. I do think, and I've heard from executives that when they start, or I should say, if they start having to look at reductions for economic purposes, it is easy to see that many of them will take that last in, first out approach and kind of normalize some of those wages where they were overpaying people. And so the only thing that gives me pause in that again is there is a generational shift in the workforce right now. And again, baby boomers are retiring at a faster clip than they're being replaced. So that may mitigate some of it a little bit, but I do entirely expect to see companies using this as an opportunity to normalize some of those labor costs.
I've been worried about people who have taken new jobs the last few years and have gotten a 30 or 40% compensation increase and have increased their lifestyle accordingly. I worry that if some of those jobs are the first to get cut, and maybe they can go find a similar job, but not at the same pay, it's just really hard for people to cut back their lifestyle. So from a financial standpoint, my message to the audience would be if you are in a position where you think you may be overpaid, take a really close look at your budget and your fixed expenses and know where you can cut back just in case your nice lucrative job is one that the company says, we need to do a little normalizing and resetting on, and they end up eliminating your position. Now, Brian, another quote that you shared with me, and you've got great one-liners. You said, if you are ready for it, you don't have to get ready for it. And we were talking about getting your resume ready. Be ready for a layoff, ready for a recession when you shared that with me. If you are ready for it, you don't have to get ready for it. Now, as a financial advisor, when I hear this, I think about money and having a financial plan. And I've always said, if you know where you stand today financially, you don't have to hit the panic button if you hear that your job is being cut. So what is your advice for corporate professionals, especially in executive roles, to get ready for a potential downsizing at their company?
Sure. So the low-hanging fruit, I guess, would be your marketing materials. Like you said, executives need to have, and as it applies particularly to executives, not just a resume. Everyone needs a good resume, but executives are also certainly going to need an updated and optimized professional LinkedIn profile, along with an executive bio. But that's the easy stuff, frankly. And even if you're not one like me who enjoys writing resumes, for sure, even if you did a Google search in your hometown of resume writers near me, you will find all kinds of people that will be willing to write your resume for you for a reasonable amount. So that's kind of the easy thing. I think what's more difficult for executives is the networking aspect. And so, for executives, there's a good 70-80% chance that should they find themselves in unexpected job loss, their next role is going to come from someone they know or someone that knows someone they know. So contacts that they have in their industry, people they've worked with in the past, retained search firms. So making sure that network is activated before the event happens is crucial. And we tell people all the time that networking is something that executives should do, whether they're looking for a job or not. But the fact of the matter is most don't when they're working for a job. And it's totally understandable. People get busy. They're working 60, 70 hours a week, and then they have a family at home. And so for a lot of people, networking just kind of drops down in their priority list. Totally understandable. But when in a job search, it's a crucial component to the success of their eventual job search. And when we talk about if you are ready, you don't have to get ready. The primary component, I think, that outside of obviously resume writing and whatnot, is making sure that your network is already active. So for an executive that might think that there's a chance of unexpected job loss in the next year or so, I think it is entirely appropriate to start thinking about networking now. Now, what do I mean about that? Too many people think networking just means going to some association meeting and handing out business cards and that kind of thing. And while there may be some value in that, that's not exactly what I mean. Everyone has a professional network of people that they may not have engaged with for a period of time. And so finding the people, sitting down, making a list maybe of 25, 50, 75 people, influential people that they are connected to, and just reconnect with them. Set a goal for yourself to have maybe 2 lunches a week of a colleague or somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time. Or try to set up maybe 2 phone calls a week just to reconnect with, someone that you worked with 5 years ago that you haven't, perhaps you had a good relationship with them, but maybe they've just fallen off the radar, which is, again, is perfectly normal. Or even search firms, search firms that you worked with in the past or that have contacted you about executive opportunities. So I tell people going ahead and reactivating those networks now. Once you do enter a job market, one of the things you'll have to do as a job seeker is to ask people for help. Hey, I see a CFO over at this company over there. I'm looking at the general counsel role there. Is there any way you can get my name in front of them? Well, when you ask for help, it is much more comfortable to do that to a network that's already active. It is much more uncomfortable to call, using the example I just used. Hey, CFO over here, I know we haven't talked in 10 years, but there's this job I want there. Can you help me? That's a lot more uncomfortable for people. So having your network activated already makes the job search process much more easy should you get to that point. And again, it's not something that you need to spend an exorbitant amount of time at, but I think it's perfectly reasonable now to start setting goals of, let me have 1 or 2 lunches a week of people I haven't touched in a while, 1 or 2 phone calls a week, that kind of thing.
I think that's so wise. And I've seen with a lot of executives I work with over the years, you're right, they do get comfortable in that corporate environment and they've got maybe their internal network, colleagues that they're working with on projects day to day, or those that they're reporting to or reporting to them. But when it comes to networking, building relationships outside of the company that they're working for, especially if they've worked for that company for a long time, it does tend to go by the wayside. And a few other pieces of advice that I've heard about networking over the years is think about where you're already spending your time. Maybe you play in a tennis league on the weekend. Well, that's a network of people for you to make sure you're connecting with. Maybe grab a cup of coffee after a tennis match, or maybe you golf with the same group of people every Thursday night. That's another natural network that you're part of. And it may just be a little bit more, business chat from time to time to make sure you're being intentional to let people know what you do from a professional standpoint. So again, if that day comes where you need help, you've got your intentional network you've built and then your network that you're already in that you just simply need to expand upon and hopefully can do that in a fun, relaxing way that you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. The social networks are just as important, particularly for people that are, others that are in professional environments, of course.
Right.
But you said it, your internal network. Well, that's important, but it's also a network that's already active. And so when I talk about setting goals to meet with people, have lunches or calls or whatever, I'm talking primarily about the inactive network, the people we haven't talked to in a long time.
Brian, let's say that you do learn your job is being eliminated. So, what are the steps that you advise your clients to take next?
Well, when it comes to once you learn that your job is going away, the next immediate steps, it sounds obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. And you can negotiate your severance package. Some companies don't budge, and that's okay, but many do. And let's say you're offered 6 months of severance pay. There's nothing wrong with going back and asking for 9 months. Not to sound insensitive, but what's the worst they're going to do? I mean, they're not going to fire you for asking for more. So a lot of companies expect people to come back and negotiate. So you can negotiate your severance package. Outside of the cash specific components, your severance pay, your equity payouts and bonuses and these kind of things, there are some things that I think are crucial about engaging with when it comes to a severance package. Number one, make sure you're getting the best deal you can when it comes to non-cash benefits like medical and whatnot. Jumping straight into COBRA is an expensive proposition. So if you can negotiate for an extension of company paid benefits, that would be to your benefit, obviously. And I don't mean to sound self-serving, but outplacement. Make sure that the company is allowing you to work with professionals that can help you with your job search. On top of that, I think it's important too, if you have an employment lawyer that you know, it's always good to have an employment lawyer look over your severance agreement to make sure that you're getting the best deal for yourself, but also to make sure that you're not being negatively impacted by overburdensome non-compete clauses and that kind of thing. So there are employment lawyers in every city. I have several friends that are employment lawyers that I know that would be happy to help people look through their separation agreement. So particularly the higher net worth that you're in and the larger the severance package is, it's important to make sure that you're handling that the right way.
And I agree that the severance packages are a huge component of the job transitions, and understanding the rules inside those severance packages, especially when it relates to things like your stock options, restricted stock, deferred compensation. I found over the years, and I've helped so many executives through severance and transition, that it surprises them that there's often different rules as to what happens to their stock options if they leave under a severance plan versus under the definition of retirement, or if they were to leave on their own. In some cases, you have an extended period of time to exercise those stock options, or understanding what options are forfeited if you don't exercise within a certain period of time, understanding how soon restricted stock vests. In many cases, in the year of severance, I've seen it be the largest income year a client ever has, especially if they get another job that same year. You could almost have double income in that
That's
one
right.
year. So taxes and tax planning is a huge component of making sure you're capturing the financial benefits to the best of your ability from that severance package. And then also, again, knowing where you stand. If you've never had a financial plan done, if you've never crunched your own numbers, you don't know how soon you need to go get a job. I've seen a number of situations where we've helped clients over the years go through severance. And the good news is that, hey, you actually don't need to go get another job with this severance package. This has actually tipped you over the edge to being financially independent, and you can decide to retire if you want to. That gives people a huge amount of breathing space to know how soon they have to go get a job, or maybe they can go fishing for 6 months, or really just wait for the right opportunity to come along. So all of those, the pre-planning is important, but once you're in it, to your point, negotiating the best deal you can, but then understanding what does that mean for you personally, and how much runway do you have before you need to take action.
And that's if if I can add, Lisa, that's a terrific point. I have talked to probably hundreds of people now over the years who have told me that were referred to me by customers of ours who said, "Hey, I didn't see this coming, but I'm 60 years old, and this will now allow me to retire." And I say, "Congratulations, that is terrific." But we all know people that 6 months after they decided to retire are bored and decide they want to get back into the workforce. And so if you're not in that bucket, that's great. I hope that I'm not in that bucket when I get to that point. But many people are. So even if you think you want to do that today, if you do, for example, have access to outplacement in your severance package, I think it's still worthwhile to go through the process to at least get your resume rewritten and get you in the right mind frame, because 6 months down the road, if you've done more fishing than you ever thought you'd be able to do and decide you do want to go back to work, you want to be able to have those tools at your disposal and an updated resume and whatnot, so that you can get back into it more quickly and easily.
That's great advice, Brian. I 100% agree with that. And it's a huge transition point in someone's life. And if you've never retired, you don't know what it really feels like. So certainly, agree with making sure that you're not, letting your professional posture and branding and positioning falter, even if you do take a short break and realize, hey, this break was great, it's fun, but I'm ready to get reengaged.
Exactly.
I'd like to thank Brian McNeill of Challenger Gray and Christmas for joining me today and sharing with us tips on, if you are ready for it, you don't need to get ready for it. If you find yourself in between jobs, reach out to Brian at 803-448-2610 and connect with him on LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining us today, and be well.